If you're looking to be noticed wherever you go for safety and of course style, this XK Glow fifth wheel sequential turn signal, brake, and reverse light will be a great way to do it for your 1997 or newer TJ, JK, or JL Wrangler. Now this will fill the spare tire with bright red and white LEDs, which will bring a modern appearance back to the Wrangler, especially for those earlier generations, while also making you incredibly noticeable when it comes to safety while you're out on the street. Now the addition of this will also increase your rear end visibility drastically if that's something that you're struggling with and want an easy and pretty affordable solution to achieve that. This ring will feature a plate design which will allow you to easily install this behind the spare tire and will remain pretty stealthy with a smoked lens over top of the LEDs. Now what I think stands out most about this is that this isn't just going to consist of one ring of LEDs, but multiple, including 384 ultra bright LEDs that will completely fill out the gaps of your spare tire or your wheel and offer a substantial light output. This will also tie into your turn signals and will have a chasing or sequential effect whenever you actuate the turn signal, making you very noticeable to anybody who's behind you. Now last but not least, this is going to include the reverse lights as well. All 144 of them will illuminate whenever you throw the Jeep in reverse, lighting up the path behind you way better than these small taillights would. Now this will be durable with an aluminum body on the back of the lighting here, and this plate portion in the middle is going to consist of a heavy-duty plastic material, and all of that is going to keep this very stable, and it's going to have a nice black powder coat finish on the back here to protect it that much more. Now, these are also going to be IP67 rated, so you can ensure that the LEDs inside are going to stay safe against any water or trail dust that you may encounter. Now this will also have a built-in error canceller, so you can keep a peace of mind that this will work with your factory PCM without getting any codes. Now this will come in at about $200, which is a bit more of a premium choice compared to other third brake lights in the category, but of course for good reason. Now this light really takes it to another level when it comes to the amount of the LEDs, really filling out that spare wheel there, and the features that this includes with the sequencing, brake lights, and the addition of the reverse lights, which is something that you don't see too often. Now I think if you're a fan of spare tire lighting but want to take it up a notch when it comes to the features and also want to keep it pretty affordable as far as a solution for backup lighting or rear lighting is concerned, then this is going to be a great choice. Now install will require some wiring, as you can see here, but it's nothing that you can't handle. So this is going to get a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, taking you about an hour to get the job done. At this point we can head over to the shop and check out a detailed breakdown of the install and what it looks like step by step. That's going to wrap it up for me. Let's go ahead and get into it.
Tools required for this install include an impact gun, a plastic pry tool, a pair of pliers, wire strippers and crimpers, a T40 Torx socket, a bunch of T-taps, a bunch of male spade connectors, a few zip ties, a pair of scissors or diagonal cutters, a 19mm socket for stock lug nuts, or a 22mm socket with a spline key for aftermarket, some kind of tube to fish wires, electrical tape, a test light, and a ratchet. What's up guys? Today we're installing a spare tire light on our Wrangler, so let's get started. So our first step is to remove our spare tire. Now we have a set of aftermarket lug nuts on ours, so I'm going to be using a spline key to remove these. And then with our lug nuts removed, we can pull off our spare tire. Next, we can remove these 2 plastic panels on the inside of our tailgate. So we'll get a plastic pry tool to get in there and pop these out. Next, we can remove our tail lights. So if we come into our trunk space, we have a plastic cover here that we can get that same pry tool to pop off. And that'll give us access to this T40 Torx bolt that we can get a T40 Torx socket on to remove. And then we'll do that same thing on the other side. And now with that bolt removed, we can pull back on our taillight and grab our harness, pull back on our red tab, push in on the black, and pull that apart. And then do the same thing on the other side. So now before we install our light onto our Jeep, we're gonna situate our wiring first. Now there's a couple ways you could do this. If your Jeep has a tow package, you can use the connector that comes on the wires. Ours does not have that, so we're gonna be chopping off this connector and we're gonna be wiring this up using T-taps and male spades. Now the way the T-tap works is it has this metal fork that you put the wire into, and then once you close this up, it'll cut that wrap on the wire to make our connection. And then with our male spade, we'll be able to just slide that into the backside of it to make our connection. So we're gonna chop this off, crimp a bunch of our male spade connectors on, and then we have our blue wire is an error cancel wire. We're only gonna be wiring this up if we get error codes on our dash. 9 times out of 10, it's gonna be related to the towing, which we don't have. So I'm gonna be using some electrical tape just to close that off. And then our white wire is gonna be for our reverse. So we're gonna do the same thing where we're gonna crimp a male spade onto the end of that. So now the first thing we can do is chop off our connector. So I've got a pair of diagonal cutters to do this. And then we can just go one by one. We'll get wire strippers to strip off some lead. And then we'll twist that up. Slide a male spade connector onto our wire. And then use wire crimpers to crimp that down. And then we can get our white wire for our reverse. And then for our blue, I'm just gonna fold that over. And then we'll take some electrical tape and tape that up just so that it can't make contact with anything and potentially short out. You can also use heat shrink for this one if you have it. So now we're ready to install our light onto our studs. So we'll slide that on, then we're gonna have to pop out this grommet to run all of our wires through. So now we can pop our grommet out of place. and then we'll start feeding through our main harness. Then we can feed our blue wire in. And then our white wire for our reverse. And then we can slide our grommet back in as far as it can go. If you would like, you could drill a hole in here about 1/4 inch to run it through the grommet. But for demonstration purposes, we're not going to do that. So we'll just pop it back in as far as it can go. So now we can just run our wires across the tailgate towards our passenger side taillight. And then we can take our cover and reinstall it. And then we can reinstall our upper cover as well. So next comes the super fun part of fishing all of those wires into our taillight bucket. So you're gonna wanna get yourself a hose or something you can stick through one of these holes in the taillight bucket. We're gonna run that into our trunk, pull back a trim panel, and then we'll put our wires in, tape it up, and pull it back through. So now right above these upper 3 bolts for our tailgate hinge, we have a square hole. That's the one we're gonna be feeding our tube through. So we'll slide that in and then we'll go back inside to pull it the rest of the way through. So now we can go inside the trunk. We're gonna pull back on this weather seal so that we can pop our panel out enough to reach in there and grab our tube. And then we can grab our white wire and push that connector in first. And then we'll grab our green, red, and black wires and feed them in next. And then we'll grab a piece of tape and tape that up. And then we can pull that back through. And we'll finish that up on the other side. So now that we have our wires pulled through to the other side, we can remove our tape from our tube. And we'll pull out all of our wires. Now the next thing we're gonna have to figure out is where to put all of these wires. So to do that, we're gonna grab a test light. We're gonna put this side to a ground, and then we can probe our connector to find which wires are which. Now we have a constant power wire, and then we're gonna turn on our daytime running lights, and we'll probe to find where our power is for that. And then we'll put the corresponding wire into that, and we'll do the same thing for our brake lights. If you don't have a second person to hold down the brakes, you can get a piece of PVC pipe or the handle from a jack and wedge it in between the brake pedal and the seat, and then find your brake power wire. And then we'll do that same thing for our turn signal. So now off camera, we used our test light. You have to turn the car on to put it in reverse. So we did that off camera just because of the exhaust noise. So we found that the white wire with this purple stripe is for reverse. So we're gonna grab our first T-tap. We're gonna put the wire in between our fork here and then close that up. And you can use a pair of pliers to close it the rest of the way. Now our white wire is gonna be for our reverse, so we can make that connection now. Now next, both of these black wires are grounds, so you can use whichever you'd like for your ground. So we'll get our T-tap onto one of our black wires. And then once again, grab our pliers to close that down. Next, we have to look for our running light. So I've got a buddy in the car to turn on our running lights, but before he does that, we do have constant power on one of these wires, which we can find with the test light right there. So if we flip it over, that's our white wire with our tan stripe. So we know not to probe that because we'll get a false reading. So hit the daytime running lights. And then we'll go through probing our pins. We have light on that one, which corresponds to this white wire with the orange stripe. So we'll grab another T-tap, put that over the wire. And then we can grab our pliers and close that up. And then our green wire is going to be for our turn signal. So we'll have him hit the hazards. And then we can probe our connectors. And our one in the top left corner, which is our green wire, is for our turn signals. So you can turn those off. So we'll grab our T-tap, get it around our wire, and then once again, grab our pliers to close that down. And now we can just grab our green, which is for our turn signal, and plug that in. We'll grab our red, which is for our running lights, and plug that in. And then we'll grab our black for our ground and plug that in. And then next we'll just grab a zip tie to come back and clean up all of our wiring, and then we can do the same thing for our turn signal on the driver's side. So now we can grab a zip tie to zip tie up our mess of wire here. And then you can grab a pair of scissors or diagonal cutters to chop off your excess. And then we can take our tail light, plug that back in, press in our red tab, and slide that back into place. So now all we have left to wire up is our yellow wire for our driver's side turn signal. So we're gonna tuck this behind our weather strip, run it all the way across, and then we'll pull up our weather strip at this bottom corner, and we have a little hole that we can get this wire through and into our taillight bucket. So we're gonna take this and hook it under the other side, and then we can come in and pull this up and put it through that hole, and then I'll go back and tuck it up underneath our weather strip. Pull back on our panel just a little bit. Feed our connector through that little hole. then we can reinstall our weather strip, and we'll just pull our wire tight so that's not showing underneath. So now at the bottom here, you can see that hole where we ran our wire through. Once again, it's just right inside that plastic cover on the inside where you slide that through. So now I'll just have a friend hop in the driver's seat, and he'll hit the hazards, and we'll probe all of our prongs on the inside here to find which one flashes, and then we can add our T-tap to that wire. So now we can probe all of our prongs and find the one that blinks just like our blinker, which is going to be this bottom right one, which corresponds to our yellow wire. So you can shut off those hazards. And then we'll take our T-tap and get that onto our yellow wire. And then we'll just grab our pliers one more time to make that connection. And then we'll plug our yellow wire in there. And now we can grab our taillight and plug our connector back in and push in on that red tab. And slide our taillight back into place. So now we can reinstall that bolt that holds in our taillight and then reinstall our plastic cover. So we'll thread this in by hand, and then we'll tighten it down with our T40 Torx bit. Just make sure to go nice and slow since this is a plastic bolt. You don't want to over tighten it. And then we'll pop our cover back on and do that same thing on the other side. So now the only thing we have left to do is reinstall our spare tire as well as our lug nuts and tighten those down. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the XK Glow 5th wheel light with sequential turn signals and brake and reverse lights for your 1997 and newer Jeep Wrangler TJ, JK, and JL. Thank you for watching, and for all things Wrangler, keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.